Hello, it's only water, don't get worried. But I do have to warn you that this will probably be a bit depressing. I started thinking about Aeschylus this morning. Okay, Aeschylus was a Greek playwright around the 5th century BC. I don't believe in that BCE nonsense. Around the 5th century BC, and he wrote up to 90 plays. But of them, all we have left is perhaps only 6 of them. One of them's of very doubtful provenance. Sophocles was another writer of about the same time, and of his 120 or so works, all we have left are Oedipus the King, Antigone, Electra, Trachinian women, I should have written this down, Philoctetes, Oedipus, Colonus and Ajax. Euripides fared a little bit better. He wrote about 95 plays and there are 18 still around. In all these cases, all of their plays would have been lodged in the Great Library of Alexandria, and we should be able to find more of them. Alexandria, the library there, also housed all the knowledge of the known world, including scientific papers and historical documents. But the library was rifled when the Muslims conquered Egypt, and the Sultan Omar bin Khattab had all the books fed into the furnaces that warmed his soldiers' bathwater. They say it took 6 months to polish the lot of them off. That's a lot of books. Legend has it that Omar said if the library contained writings that were in agreement with the Quran, then they were superfluous, and if they were in contradiction with the Quran, then they were heretical. Either way, they were unnecessary. You know, Muslims make much of the idea that they rescued many philosophical works, which they translated into Arabic. You know, Aristotle, for instance, and the Christian world got these works back only when they were retranslated. But we shouldn't forget that none of these works were the plays of Aeschylus or Euripides. They only preserved the philosophical works that could be used to further the agenda of Islam, and great tragedies were not in their agenda. Imagine, for instance, a situation in which we were speculating about a playwright called Shakespeare, and we knew he'd written about 35 plays and some poetry, but all we had left was A Midsummer Night's Dream and Two Gentlemen of Verona, although we do know he'd written a play called Hamlet and a couple more called Macbeth and King Lear. Oh, and Henry V, that sort of thing. Now, some historians do say that perhaps the destruction of the library at Alexandria was a legend, and that it had already been in decline. But the fact is, we've seen in the behaviour of ISIS in Iraq, and the behaviour of the Taliban in Afghanistan, there is a strong tendency in Islam not only towards the destruction of images and statues in accordance with religious orthodoxy, but also to a sort of destruction intended to eliminate history in order to ensure the current orthodoxy. It's not only other people's history, by the way. The Saudi royal family are busily bulldozing all sorts of Muslim historical sites, graves and shrines of various sorts, as well as pagan ones. And this goes back all the way to the first editions of the Quran. of which there were many, and some with slightly differing accounts of things. But the Sultan Uthman had one specific version written, copied and sent throughout the Muslim world, and had all the others destroyed. There was one version kept by one of Muhammad's wives, Hafsa, and she refused to hand it over, but it was burned after she died. Now, you'd think that any writings of Muhammad held by one of his wives would be pretty well unassailable, wouldn't you? But it wasn't. And this is a mentality that makes me worry for Western civilization, with the influx of Muslims who have something of this mindset. Of course, not all of them do, but there are enough who have no respect for Western culture, and it doesn't take many to burn down an art gallery. In a tiny sort of way, it's happening already. For those of you who don't live in London, you might not know that the walls of the Underground, that's the subway to you guys in America, the walls of the Underground are plastered with adverts. One of the most startling features, noted with some amusement by tourists to London and commented on very frequently, was the number of adverts featuring women in underwear of various types hung up on the walls at the sides of the long escalators. However, after Sadiq Khan became Mayor of London, quietly and without fanfare, all those lingerie adverts disappeared, to be replaced by show posters and adverts for car insurance. As the Muslim influence gets stronger, we'll probably see more of such restrictions, but bit by bit, so we'll hardly notice them, until, if we don't stand up for ourselves, we're going to see the museums locked up and the contents dispersed or destroyed. You think that can't happen? Well, it's happened before. There's nothing guaranteed about cultural heritage. I haven't even got started, and I won't, on the rampage Islam made of the great universities on the west coast of India. And none of us should forget that at one time Afghanistan was a Buddhist country. It wasn't Muslim at all. It was Buddhist, as those huge Buddha statues that the Taliban blew up can attest. You'd be hard-pressed to see anything of Afghanistan's Buddhist history now. So, look, just put yourself in the future and imagine someone telling you that once upon a time there was a famous painting called the Mona Lisa. And you look at him and you say, well, what did it look like? And this guy says, well, I don't know, but it showed an unveiled woman, so it was probably a good thing that it was burnt. I'm very grateful for financial contributions, but if you don't want to give money, you can still help a lot by sharing this and other videos I've made. Also, remember to check your subscription from time to time, as sometimes subscriptions get erased for one reason or another. Till next time.